Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. This is the continuation video of our web series Unwrapping Docker. In the previous video we see um, Docker architecture, and in this video we will be proving. So the first thing we need to prove is we said Docker on your machine is a RESTful API, and it exposed, or in other words we were saying Docker is a web server that exposed the RESTful API. So it's time, let's prove it. I have a a Docker engine running on one of my server. So let me just make sure that we are running our Docker engine. So yeah, our Docker engine is running successfully. So now we need to prove uh, Docker is a web server. For to do this, I'll be using netstat command, and I will be seeing the port being exposed by Docker engine. So I can see there is a container D running. Container D process is running with a process ID of 676, and it exposes a port this. To make sure more about this is specific to the Docker engine, we will be deep diving into this process, and we'll be seeing what files being consumed to ensure that we are actually watching the Docker engine process. To do that, I'll be using lsof command. This command will list all the files consumed or utilized by the process ID called 676, which is the container or Docker process. If I hit enter, I will see there is a lots of files executed by this particular process, and all these files are related to container D, which is actually a Docker engine. We can also see it also expose a TCP web server that is exposed on 43953. So hence we proved that the Docker engine is a web server. The next thing we need to prove this particular diagram. In this diagram we said the communication between the client and the daemon is HTTP. Whatever the communication is happened through or with Docker engine is HTTP requests. So let's prove it. So we already said that we already see that this is the TCP web server. To make calls to this web server, we can use the curl command. Before do that, we need to see the process ID. Uh, sorry, the port that is exposed by a web server. So this is the port we need to use. This is the container D daemon port. For this, we already knew that. If you don't know, whenever you are accessing a TCP server, you need to mention the Unix socket. So in your curl commands. So in our curl command, we will be saying Unix dash socket. Our socket location is var run docker. This is the location where our socket file is present, and we need to execute against the port that being exposed by our container D daemon, and I will be hitting -I to get a useful information from this curl call. If I hit enter, so I can see the request or the response returns HTTP protocol. It's in HTTP protocol, content type is application/JSON. So hence we prove that the communication between client or communication with Docker daemon is an HTTP request. So we already set HTTP request, so that means there must be some APIs running. So to find out the API version, we can hit Docker version, and we can see API version is 1.141. So Docker provides a detailed documentation about API, about its API. So you can just go to the Docker Google and find out the documentation about. We already knew that our API version is 1.41, so we will directly jump into the documentation related to the 1.41. So it's a very rich documentation, and you can see there are calls you can make. So first let's check the list of containers. So we'll be using the same curl, and after that we will be just entering the payload that we got from the documentation. So what is our call? Curl minus minus Unix socket, the Unix file name and the web server address, and then the API endpoint that is exposed by Docker engine. If I hit enter, so I can see the detailed information about my both container. So it is start from here, and this is the name of the container, this is the image, this is the image ID, uh, and created date and lots of information on this. I can get the container specific container information as well, because I already knew there are a lot of documentation available, so I can do a lot of work with the API as well. So I'll be just copying the container ID, and I wanted to get information about this specific container, which is Apache Web 1. So what I can do is I can just, all these are get calls, by the way. So if I get the information of a specific container, it gives me a lot of information. So this is the this information is same as we got through Docker inspect. So Docker inspect also uses these APIs. So, or you can say Docker client uses these APIs being exposed by Docker engine. This is not done just get command. You can do create containers, you can do you whatever you are doing with the Docker CLI, you can do with the API as well. So let's take some example. We can start and stop container as well, like with the same command. Instead of JSON, like I wanted to stop my Apache container, instead of JSON /JSON, I can just pass stop parameter. If I minimize, so you can see I just pass the minus stop, and because it's a post call, so I need to pass minus x post in my curl request as well. So make sure that the call is post. So if I hit docker ps, so I won't be able to see my Apache container. If I wanted to start the same container, so I can just change my endpoint to start, and I can see container is started up 2 seconds ago. Hence we proved that the communication can be done, or the communication between the client server is HTTP. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe and share this video. Thank you for watching this video.